So we're still dealing with the patterns of clean and unclean living, learning what Yahusha loves and what Yahusha hates. And of course, it's only relevant if it's a behavior. So here in Leviticus, the patterns are established. A lot of the patterns that aren't in Genesis or Exodus are brought up in Leviticus, because this is the real meat of the instruction. This is if you want to be set apart and joined to me, then you will live this way. If not, you will be outside the camp. So technically nothing we do, our behavior, can place us outside the camp as far as Yahusha is concerned with his presence, but we can see through these patterns that we can really please him, or we can really make him angry. Do you want to make your bridegroom angry? Because if you do, you'll feel it. You will feel it. He may not cut you off yet, and he may not kick you out of the camp, but his anger will be enraged. This is why we're learning about how he feels. He doesn't change. So let's try to please him, guys. That's why we're learning these patterns of behavior. And that's why it might look like at times I'm picking and choosing. Oh, you say we don't have to do that one, but we do have to do that one. Oh, what? We're not unclean if we touch a woman who's been menstruating, but we still have to eat clean food. That's because after Yahusha died and his blood was shed, we cannot become ceremonially unclean. We can't. His blood is that powerful. Nothing we do, apart from deny him and walk away, can make us ceremonially unclean. We have open door to his presence. We can come boldly to the throne room. However, there are certain things mentioned in these scriptures that are an abomination. What does that tell me? It tells me that if he so passionately, fiercely hates something, he's not going to change his mind, is he? Yeah. I mean, what clothing they wore and haircuts and things like that's a moot point. Most of those things were dealing with mixing with the pagan nations and all those sort of things. And it's good to learn them, but things that are an abomination should be underlined and highlighted, and do not do those things. I can only think of a few things offhand that I know that are an abomination. Eating blood was an abomination. Sodomy was an abomination. Eating unclean animals was an abomination. Bringing a tree into your home, dressing it up with tinsel is an abomination. That's 4 I can think of at the time. Those 4 things are not to be done, you know? So that's how I'm reading it and looking at it, through the eyes of context of behavior. I think, well, a lot of these are cultural and not relevant to us today, but the behaviors are. That's why in some instances I'm saying, you don't have to do that anymore. It's a behavior. Building sukkahs and blowing shofars, and they're all old cultural behaviors. We have, current behaviors and cultures that we have. But what's the essence of what's going on here? Food is something that's universal, and food is something that we all eat. And if it's unclean, does that mean we're kicked out of Yahusha's presence? No, but he's not pleased. So stop doing it. It's not about, we shouldn't judge our behaviors on whether, well, if we do it, will we be kicked out? Will we not be kicked out? No, it's more, will this please him or will this displease him? Because our hearts are wanting to please him. Our hearts are wanting to obey him. So let's talk about the Day of Atonement now. Yahusha spoke to Moshe after the death of Aaron's 2 sons, who died after they entered Yahusha's presence and burnt the wrong kind of incense before him. Remember that? So it's really serious that they be obedient. Be obedient. He said, warn your brother Aaron not to enter the most set apart place behind the inner curtain whenever he chooses, for if he does, he will die too. So this is kind of continuing on from the conversation he had straight after they died. Warn your brother Aaron, don't go in there whenever you want, willy-nilly, otherwise you'll die too. For the ark's cover, the lid of atonement, is right there, and I myself am present in the cloud above the atonement lid. Before Aaron enters the sanctuary area, he must bathe himself in water and put on his special priestly garments, before bringing a young bull for a purifying offering and a ram for an ascending near offering from the community of Yisrael. Then he must take 2 male goats and present them to me at the entrance of the tabernacle. Then he is to cast special lots to determine which goat will be reserved as an offering to me, and which will carry the disobedience of the people to the wilderness of Azazel. Azazel in scripture is symbolic of an unclean place ruled by the enemy Shaitan. Pretty sure one of the unclean spirits in the book of Enoch, his name was Azazel. So does that mean that's where he lived, out there? It's symbolic of an evil, unclean place ruled by the enemy Shaitan, outside the camp. So they had to cast lots. This is interesting. What's the pattern of casting lots? When have we heard people casting lots? They were casting lots when they were ripping apart Yahusha's garment to see who was going to get the souvenir garment, who was going to get the biggest piece. Casting lots. They also casted lots when they decided who was going to be impaled, because it was their custom when Yahusha was about to be impaled. It was their custom to release a criminal. And so Pilate gave the crowd, it's like casting a lot, really gambling. He just threw it up in the air and said, who do you want? There's a criminal here, or there's this Mashiach guy. Which one do you want? And they all cried out, Barabbas, crucify, impale Barabbas, kill Barabbas. So you can see the whole idea of casting lots. It's all about the scapegoat. So let's have a look here. Aaron will then present the goat chosen by lots as a purifying offering. This goat was the purifying offering, the goat that would purify the nation. For me, and the other goat, the scapegoat chosen by lots to be sent away, will be kept alive, standing before me. When it is sent away to Azazel in the wilderness, the people will be purified and made right with me. Who was sent out into the evil wilderness and killed? Yahusha was sent out into the wilderness. And the brilliant thing about this is, look here, if the enemy is outside the camp, Yahusha is mocking the enemy here, who, through his tactics, lies and deceptions, tempts and causes Israel to disobey Yahusha. The only reason we have to do these sacrifices and offerings is because Shaitan has tempted them, they've received it, and they've disobeyed Yahusha. So Yahusha's mocking Shaitan here, who through his tactics, lies and deceptions, tempts and causes Israel to disobey Yahusha. However, Yahusha takes all of Israel's evil and disobedience and places them onto a scapegoat, who in turn carries them away, back into Shaitan's domain, who can do absolutely nothing about it. So it's like Shaitan throwing a hand grenade into the camp, and Yahusha picking it up and throwing it back out into the wilderness, saying, no returns, dibs, no returns. So he can't throw it back. Got that? He's like, very clever. He's mocking the enemy, saying all this wickedness and evil that you've thrown into my camp, here, have it back. And the goat carries it out into the wilderness. Aaron will then present his own bull as a purifying offering to purify himself and his family, making them right with me. Then fill an incense burner and burn coals from the altar that stand before me, taking 2 handfuls of fragrant powdered incense and carrying the burner and the incense behind the inner curtain. There in my presence he will put the incense on the burning coals so that a cloud of incense will rise over the ark's cover, the lid of atonement, that rests on the ark of the blood covenant witness. If he follows these instructions, he will not die. This only happened once a year, remember? This wasn't every day or every week. Once a year, this is the Day of Atonement. If he follows these instructions, he will not die. Then he must take some of the blood of the bull, dip his finger in it, sprinkle it on the east side of the atonement lid 7 times. Whenever you see the word east, it means the most set apart, the most important part. The atonement lid is the very spot where Yahusha's presence connects with mankind on earth. The atonement lid is where the dimensions connect. And Yahusha engulfed it with smoke, because no man can look upon Yahusha's essence and live. So the smoke cloud was to protect the high priest from certain death. So Adam and Ḥawwa could look into I don't think they could walk, I don't think they could travel between dimensions, but they could see into the higher dimension. They could see, remember the circles, the animation I put up, they could see into the higher dimension. They had open heavens, open Shemaim. They could see in there and communicate with all the creatures. And with Yahusha, they had that relationship. But of course, when they disobeyed and listened to the enemy, the connections were severed. Dimensions were severed. So here on the atonement lid, the dimensions are connected once more, covered with blood. But still, you cannot look into the higher dimension. We today can't look into the higher dimension. We can enter inside ourselves and hear Yahusha's voice and have a relationship with him, but we can't actually see into this dimension, can we? Even though Yahusha's blood has been sacrificed. So that's something that we're looking forward to experiencing as well. We haven't had the full experience, climactic experience either yet. And that's why it's so exciting to run your race. This is the carrot that's dangled in front of us, the wedding feast. Do you want to make it, you know? So anyway, the smoke was there so that Aaron couldn't see into the dimension and be dead. Then Aaron must slaughter the first goat as a purifying offering for the people and carry its blood behind the inner curtain. There he will sprinkle the goat's blood over the atonement lid and in front of it, just as he did with the bull's blood. And through this process, he will purify the most set apart place. And he will do the same for the entire tabernacle because of the defiling disobedience and rebellion of the Israelites. No one else is allowed inside the tabernacle when Aaron enters it for the purification ceremony in the most set apart place. No one may enter until he comes out again after purifying himself, his family and all the congregation of Israel, making them right with me. Remember right before the establishment ceremony, when the divine fire came down? The only way that fire could come down and like electrocute, energize the whole tabernacle and make it clean, is because it had all been covered with blood, it had all been anointed with oil. It was clean, it was set apart. It was something that had not been defiled by the world, because Yahusha can't be in this world. He can only be in vessels that have been washed clean, ceremonially atoned with blood through the innocent animal, and then it's something that's set apart to him, because the blood from this dimension and the fire from his dimension connected, and he could live there. So now, once a year, there's been like a build-up of unclean behaviours. People are responsible for their own behaviours, but then there's behaviours that fall through the gaps, that through unclean fallen nature and all through behaviours need to be purified, because they're building up. There's a build-up of filth happening, and so once a year Aaron had to go in. No priests were allowed in the sanctuary at this time, because he was in there with his 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝕡. He was in there fumigating all the filth, and he fumigated, of course, with blood. So he had blood, and that's why it's saying here you can't send the priests in while Aaron's in there, because otherwise they'll be zapped. There's a bit of we've just let off a bug bomb in the house to get rid of all the cockroaches. Can no one go in there today, please? Just go out and do something for the day. We've just set off a bug bomb in the house to set off all the bugs. So once a year, Aaron goes in there to purify not just the sanctuary, the set apart place, most set apart place, but the whole camp, so that Yahusha can live there. This is aside from the regular daily, weekly, monthly offerings. This is a once in a year big one. Then Aaron will come out to purify the altar that stands before me by taking some of the blood from the bull and the goat and putting it on each of the horns of the altar. Then he must sprinkle the blood with his finger 7 times over the altar, and in this way he will cleanse it from Israel's uncleanness and make it set apart. When Aaron has finished purifying the most set apart place and the tabernacle and the altar, he must present the live goat, laying both of its hands on the goat's head and confessing over it all the wickedness, rebellion and disobedience of the people of Israel. So it's like they've let one goat out into the wilderness as a up yours to Shaitan, and then this other goat, Aaron's kind of gone into the set apart place and sort of like symbolically brought out all the filth of the nation, and now he's putting it onto this other goat. Laying both his hands on the goat's head and confessing over it all the wickedness, rebellion, and disobedience. In this way, he will transfer the people's disobedience to the head of the goat, All the disobedience from that whole year, he will transfer onto the head of the goat. And we've already dealt with substitution, you understand that? Then a man specifically chosen for the task will drive the goat into the wilderness, and it will carry all the people's disobedience upon itself into a desolate land. Interesting, isn't it? That's like the scapegoat. We're going to deal with more about that.
When Aaron goes back into the tabernacle, he must take off the linen garments he was wearing when he entered the set-apart place, most set-apart place, and he must leave the garments there. Then he must bathe himself with water in a special place, put on his regular garments and go out to sacrifice, and ascending the offering for himself, and one for the people too. And through this process he will purify himself and the people, making them right with me. He must then burn all the fat of the purifying offering on the altar. Also the man chosen to drive the scapegoat out into the wilderness of 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗪 must wash his clothes too, and bathe himself in water before he returns to the camp. The bull and the goat presented as purifying offerings, whose blood Aaron takes into the most set-apart place for purification ceremony, will be carried outside the camp, while their hides, internal organs, and dung are all to be burned. The man who burns them must wash his clothes and bathe himself in water before returning to the camp also.
So Yahusha's stressing here that whatever you're wearing can become defiled too if you go into an unclean place. You know, like the virus can be transferred through touch, through containment. So on the 10th day of the 7th month, which is Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, you must afflict your beings, which means to fast, and do no work, which means to rest. This goes for the native-born Israelite and the foreigners living among you. This is a permanent instruction for you, and on that day, offerings of purification will be made for you, and you will be purified in my presence from all your disobedience. It will be a Shabbat day of complete rest for you, and you must afflict yourselves, fast. In future generations, I've dealt with this, remember, about fasting, afflicting yourselves. We afflict ourselves on a daily basis by saying no to the world. How do we, in our 21st century lives, afflict ourselves? It's just not eating food. Plenty of people fast and don't eat, and they're not even believers. It's just a modern thing today. Fast, so you can lose weight and be healthy. Fast your bodies all the time. Nothing to do with Yahusha. So how can we make this about Yahusha in today's life? The fasting, the afflicting ourselves, is to stay away from unclean behaviours of the world. Not just once a year, every day. To see how we can bring the behaviours out, glean from the behaviours. Oh, why don't you do that with the unclean foods and the Shabbat day then? Isn't that just a behaviour too? Yeah, it is. And we do it every day. We rest every week. Shabbat day. It's a behaviour of rest. And the unclean animals, we do that too every day. We don't eat them, all right? But as far as fasting goes, it's a complete day of rest. And the fasting, there's a deeper meaning to this fasting, you know? I'm not just picking out things that I want to do and I don't want to do. I'm listening and seeing that this has been fulfilled. It's actually ridiculous to go fasting from food on a day where we're supposed to be fasting every day of the year. These things are realizations. I'm going through this to glean the behaviours so we can understand what Yahusha's done for us and what we need to do to be part of the bride. They're the two things that we're reading this for. What Yahusha's already done and what we need to do. What has he done and what do we need to do? And we're gleaning from the patterns. It's all about learning patterns. In future generations, the purification ceremony will be performed by the priest who has been anointed and ordained to serve as high priest in place of his ancestor Aaron. He will put the set-apart linen garments on and purify the most set-apart place, the tabernacle, altar, priest, and the entire congregation. This is a permanent instruction for you to purify the people of Israel. Well, that's a permanent instruction too, the high priest. So you can't just read something that says this is a permanent instruction and go, oh, we have to do that. Because there is no temple anymore. There's no high priest. There's no garments. There's no animal sacrifices, even though they're all permanent instructions. So you can't just read something that says a permanent instruction and go, okay, we have to do that today. We do have to do it today, but the behaviours surrounding the instructions have transformed. The sacrifices are different now. The tabernacle is different. We are the tabernacle. The sacrifices are our behaviour. We lay our lives down on there, and the smoke that goes up is the sacrifice, our behaviour, our worship. You understand this? To not understand this, you are actually disobeying Yahusha by just doing the ink on the page. Let me say that again. You can be doing the ink on the page and still disobeying Yahusha because you're not caring enough to spend enough time and listen to him, and he'll say to you, That was cultural. It means nothing for you to do that today. It's just silliness. You look like an idiot. The thing that you do today, this is what I want you to understand when you go into the feast. And he'll tell you things, you know. It's not just an outward show of blowing a shofar, building a sukkah, fasting, you know, holding up bread and wine and, you know, unleavened bread, we can't eat leaven and all these silly outward shadows. And Yahusha will go, did you know what that really means? This is what that meant. Do this. So, do you want to be outside when Yahusha spoke on the mount, all these parables and riddles and things, or do you want to be in the inner, in the home, inner sanctum, where he actually explained to his disciples what that meant? So everybody's out there in their religions doing all these weird things that they think Scripture says, but when you come inside and you put your head on the bosom of Yahusha and get to know him, and he goes, don't worry about that, do this. That's why we're seeking all the time to hear from Yahusha. What's the fresh word, Father? You could read these scriptures hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, but unless you hear the fresh word regarding them, you're still in darkness. And Moshe followed all these instructions exactly as Yahusha had instructed him. The purpose of the Day of Atonement was to purify the tabernacle and later the temple and its grounds from the accumulated impurity brought into it by both the priests and common people alike, and to purify the people, the priests and the high priest. Do we, as a 21st century bride, have access beyond the veil to the most set apart place, where only Yahusha, the great high priest, can dwell? Or are we limited to the set apart place of the tabernacle? Interesting question people asked. We might be allowed to come boldly to the throne room, but do we live there? Can we just come in whenever we want? Or are we contained to the set apart place? Can we go into the most set apart place? I believe so. Or are we limited to the set apart place? What about the veil that was rent at Yahusha's death? That's why I believe that. Many people out there are saying we don't have access to the most set apart place. We only have access to the set apart place, the menorah, the bread, the incense, our communication, all that. Okay, that would imply that there is still a veil up. But we know that at Yahusha's death, he rent the veil. So that's old religious thinking, methinks. What about the veil that was rent at Yahusha's death, allowing open access to fellowship with him again? That's why he says, I've rebuilt the booth of David, the tabernacle of David, I've rebuilt it again. What was different about Moshe's tabernacle to David's tabernacle? There was no veil. The presence was, the Shekinah fell and it was free for everybody to experience. Even though Yahusha hadn't died yet. That was what the phenomenal thing was about David's tent, booth, tabernacle. And Paul says, I've rebuilt. Yahusha says, I've rebuilt the tabernacle of David. So that's what we know about today, that it's open. The doorway is open. We don't have the same experience that Adam and Ḥawwa had, but within ourselves, the dimensions are aligned. This was interesting. Aaron has to change. Aaron has to change from his normally flamboyant high priest garments, consisting of a blue robe, jeweled chest plate, and costly, exquisite woven fabrics, into very plain and simple white linen clothing. First, when the high priest went about his normal duties in front of the people, the expensive and magnificent clothing he wore served as a clear line of separation between him and the common folks. The high priest's clothing communicated the fact that Aaron was the most set-apart man, and that it was he who was chosen, the chosen mediator between Yahusha and man. On the other hand, when Aaron changed into the plain white garments woven out of fine linen, this now symbolized the lowly status that even Yahusha's chosen mediator held in comparison to the set-apartness of the one and only living Elohim. Scripture makes it pretty clear that the colour white symbolizes purity, cleanness, and undefiled set-apartness. So when he went out to deal with the people and be performing his duties as the high priest, Yahusha wanted everybody to know that this is the most set-apart man in your midst, and he should be treated as such because he is the mediator between me and you. However, when he went into the presence of Yahusha, all that status was now gone because he was now in the presence of Yahusha, and he was to wear white and be pure because he was going near the set apartness. And remember, he had to wear the bells too, remember? Because if he got struck dead, no one could go in there to pull him out, so he had to have a string tied around his foot and bells. So if they heard the bells stop moving, it means he was dead, and they'd pull him out by a cord. So breaking false worship patterns. Yahusha said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel that if any of them sacrifice a bull or a lamb or a goat anywhere, inside or outside the camp, instead of bringing it to the entrance to the tabernacle to present it as an offering to me, that person will be guilty as a murderer, because they've shed blood and will be cut off from the community. If you weren't shedding the blood of an animal for an offering, you're just murdering an animal. Interesting. You're bringing death. Yahusha doesn't like death. He hates death. That's probably why we won't be eating animals when he comes back either. There'll be harmonious existence between all the living creatures. So if you can't just bring in any willy-nilly animal and kill it. If it's not an offering, you'll be guilty, a murderer, because you've shed blood and it will be cut off and you'll be cut off from the community. The purpose of this rule is to stop the people from sacrificing animals in the open fields, and it'll ensure that they bring their sacrifices to the priest at the entrance of the tabernacle, so he can present them to me as an intimate peace offering. Then, remember, the intimate peace offering was the one that everybody could eat together afterwards, so everybody liked that one. Then the priest will be able to splatter the blood against my altar at the entrance of the tabernacle, and he will burn the fat as a pleasing aroma for me. So you can't just go and eat animals and do all this stuff that you're doing. It's got to be presented as a sacrifice first. So the fat can be offered to me, the blood, the smoke can be offered to me. I want to be involved in all this, guys. Don't just go off and killing animals because it's murder. If I'm not involved in this through the sacrifices, you're just ending innocent lives, and you're a murderer. Any domestic animal that was to be used as a meat source for food had to first be offered up as a sacrifice and ritually slaughtered in the precise manner Yahusha had commanded. They were thinking that if they were outside the camp, then Yahusha's blood rules didn't apply to them. Before the Levitical priesthood was raised up at Sinai, the Hebrews were erecting small altars and offering up animals to the pagan deities of Egypt. Or they were sacrificing to Yahusha their own way without going to the tabernacle as instructed. The firstborns were used to perform these rituals in each household. So this new priesthood was a bit of a slap in the face to all the firstborns who had pretty much been fired. Remember the firstborns? When they left Egypt, Yahusha said, all your firstborns belong to me. Kind of like the priest of the home. Any slaughtering, altars, sacrificing, anything that had to be done, the firstborn was in charge of that. And they've all been fired now because Yahusha's instituted the Levitical, the whole tribe. 𝔹𝕖𝕙𝕒𝕚. So this was a bit of a slap in the face to all the firstborns who had pretty much been fired. Yahusha changed this instruction once Israel reached the promised land, for it would have been way too difficult given the spread out size of Canaan. So this was another wilderness training process to purge out the 400 years of Egyptian culture, pagan deity worship, and Egyptian ways of thinking that were ingrained into the psyche of the ancient Hebrews. Experts say that it takes between 30 days to 6 months to firmly establish a new lifestyle habit. It was going to take Yahusha 40 years with this mob. What did all that mean? Well, when they got to the land of Canaan, it would have been impossible for them to present every single animal they wanted to eat to the priests, because the whole land of Canaan they took over eventually, so they would have had to travel days just to get to where the priests were. So this wasn't an instruction for the land of Canaan. This was an instruction for them in the wilderness to, just like the manna, just like other tests, to retrain them, to get rid of all the sacrificing willy-nilly to idols and false deities out of their system, bring them into a mindset of, if you're going to eat meat, if you're going to kill an animal, it's to be dedicated to me, done through the priest because the blood has life in it. So don't do it yourself or your own way. And even if you're living outside the camp, you can't do it your own way because then you're just murdering an animal. So, and like it says here, experts say it takes between 30 days to 6 months to firmly re-establish a new lifestyle. If you want to change your lifestyle habit, it takes time. How long is it going to take Yahusha to change these guys' habits, their dirty habits? So, I'm going to finish on this page. Israel must stop disobeying me by offering sacrifices to goat demons and whoring after them, for this is a permanent instruction for them to be observed from generation to generation. Some were still worshipping demons and idols outside the camp. Some people went outside the camp by choice to worship demons and idols. Interesting that Yahusha is now talking about goat demons right after the instruction about the scapegoat that was sent outside the camp as an up yours to shake Shaitan. So he's talking about goats a lot. They were worshipping goats a lot. You know, and the goat demon, there's a goat demon and all sorts of other demons, the goat demon. And then this is mentioned in the same context, same time as the scapegoat. And then he says, stop worshipping all these stupid goat demons. And any native Israelite or foreigner living among you who offers an ascending knee or a sacrifice but doesn't bring it to the entrance of the tabernacle to offer it to me will be cut off from the community. So they're learning how to offer up all these sacrifices, but some of them are just doing it themselves outside. No. In 1 Corinthians 10 it says, the sacrifices of pagans are offered to demons, not to Yahusha. And I don't want you getting involved with demons. So even Yahusha says this again, stop worshipping demons. I don't have anything to do with demons. Don't listen to them, don't entertain them, ignore them. Don't rebuke them or bind them or all this rubbish religious people go on with. Just ignore them. You're not allowed to have anything to do with demons. The life is in the blood. If anyone among you drinks or eats blood in any form, I will turn against that person and cut him off from the community of your people. For the life of the body is in the blood. Interesting, he doesn't say this about other things because drinking blood is an abomination to him. So there's many things that are cultural that we're going through here. Fashions and woven linens that are mixed and all these sort of things that are teaching us lessons but not relevant today. But this is, because he says, I'll go against you, I'll hunt you down, this is an abomination. I will turn against that person and cut you off from the community. And remember, being cut off was physical and spiritual existence severed, annihilated, gone. For the life is in the blood. I've given you the blood on the altar to purify you, making you right with me. And it's the blood given in exchange for a life that makes purification possible. Not just blood shed willy-nilly, only the blood that's given in exchange for a life purifies you. So that's why I've told you never to eat or drink blood, neither you nor the foreigners living among you. And if any native Israelite or foreigner living among you goes hunting and kills an animal or bird that is proved for eating, he must drain its blood and cover it with earth, for the life of every creature is in its blood. And that's why I've told you never to eat or drink blood, for the life of any creature is in its blood. So whoever consumes blood will be cut off from the community. So if you eat the meat of an animal that died naturally or was torn up by wild animals, they must wash their clothes and bathe themselves in water and remain unclean until evening. But then they will be clean. But if they do not wash their clothes and bathe themselves, they will be punished for their disobedience. Very serious. When man goes hunting after wild feral animals like deer, antelope and birds, he doesn't have to somehow drive his prey towards the sanctuary and kill them there. However, drinking the animal's blood was still an abomination. So since the blood of a wild animal is not suitable for sacrifices, its blood must be drained and returned to the dust of the ground. This is interesting. When I said before that they couldn't just kill animals and eat them, they had to be offered up first. He's talking about clean animals, the animals that are suitable for offering up as sacrifices. But if they wanted to hunt animals outside the camp that were still considered clean animals that they could eat, they still weren't allowed to eat the blood. All right, that's what he's saying here. Its blood must be drained and returned to the dust of the ground. blood has one purpose, and that is to provide life and atonement. This is its set apart purpose, and doing anything else with it makes it common. And so this behavior is evil in the eyes of Yahusha. That's what we're looking for, behavior. Anything we do with blood that does not involve atonement or life is evil. So that's the only purpose blood has. It's like this secret ingredient. You know, mankind can synthetically produce blood and, you know, all these sort of things, put the right amount of white and red blood cells in it and artificially make blood happen. But the actual life, those artificial bloods are then put into the body and then the body will produce more of its own. The body does, the body that Yahusha created. The point here is this, that blood in itself is like a unique creation. Mankind doesn't know this. The blood is where the life is. That everyone's looking for the spark. The spark and the blood are the same thing. Mankind can produce blood, but they can't produce the spark of existence, of life. So that's why Yahusha is saying this is like a magic potion almost. Blood. You can't drink it. You can't eat it. Its only purpose is to atone for disobedience. And the only reason that blood is suitable is because blood has life in it. Everything else in our body is just flesh and bones or whatever else, but blood is where the life is. So if you wanted to look for where's the life actually in our bodies, where is the source of life? Oh, you can't live without a heart, or you can't live without a brain, or you can't live without blood, because blood is where the life is. You know? In essence, you can't live without the blood. So I'm going to finish there today, guys. Fascinating, isn't it? Breaking unclean habits. See, there were people outside the camp, living outside the camp by choice, sacrificing animals, thinking, oh, they're all mad in there. We're not really. Maybe they didn't want to graft into Israel. Maybe they just wanted to leave Egypt because it seemed like a good thing to do, but they wanted to live outside the camp and have communities. There are lots of communities outside the camp of people, mixed multitudes, that didn't choose to be grafted into Israel. And they weren't necessarily sick either and forced to live out there. They lived out there by choice. What does it say to us today? Once again, I'll bring up the same analogy. You can be washed in the blood of the Lamb and just stay in Egypt, or washed in the blood of the Lamb and leave Egypt, but still live outside the camp and not be going for your prize. So, you know, all these patterns mean something, guys. These patterns show us to keep going. The pattern is still alive and kicking today, and the pattern, of course, finds its greatest fulfillment in behaviour. Is your behaviour going to get you to the wedding feast? Or is your behaviour an abomination to Yahusha?